Close your eyes for a second. Picture your favorite artist right now, the one who owns every stage they walk onto. The lights crack open like thunder. The crowd doesn't just scream, they surrender. There's a long pause before the first note even drops, and in that silence, 50,000 people forget how to breathe. You think that feeling is new? You think that formula was born in the last decade? It wasn't. What you're watching, every dramatic entrance, every synchronized dance break, every music video that feels like a short film, it's all been done before. Not just inspired by someone from the past. Architected by him, down to the costume, down to the pause, down to the white sock pulled just high enough to catch the spotlight. Most people alive today have never stood in the same room as Michael Jackson. But here's the strange truth: every room they have stood in has been shaped by him. Every arena tour, every visual album, every artist who turns a stage into a living, breathing, cinematic world, they are all working from the same blueprint. A blueprint drawn in the early 80s by a kid from Gary, Indiana, who decided the rules of entertainment weren't good enough and rewrote all of them. Today, the vault opens and we're going inside. I am Frank John, your host, and you are watching The Legend Vault. We don't just look at history, we decode the legends. If you want the raw truth about the icons who shaped our world, you're in the right place. Step into the vault, hit that subscribe button, and let's get into it. Let's go back to 1983, May 16th, to be exact. The Pasadena Civic Auditorium, NBC is broadcasting a Motown 25th anniversary special, and Michael Jackson is about to perform Billie Jean for the first time on national television. Now, before that night, singers performed, they stood there. Some of them shuffled a little. James Brown could work a room like nobody's business, and Elvis had that hip thing going. But as a complete language movement, as storytelling, choreography, as emotional architecture, that was still uncharted territory. Then Michael grabbed the brim of his fedora, hit that first isolation, slid backward across the stage like gravity had simply given up on him, and 47 million people watching at home collectively lost their minds. The moonwalk, except here's what most people miss: he didn't invent the moonwalk. Street dancers had been doing variations of it for years. What Michael did was something far more significant. He perfected it, he refined it, drilled it in rehearsal until the mechanics disappeared and what was left looked supernatural. That's the difference between influence and genius. Influence borrows, genius transforms. But the moonwalk is just the headline. Underneath it is an entire movement vocabulary that Michael spent decades building: the toe stand, the anti-gravity leans, which required a specially engineered stage bolt and shoe to execute, by the way, a technique he actually patented in 1992. The crotch grab timed to a musical hit. The sharp isolation followed by absolute stillness. Each of these moves wasn't random, they were tactical. You see, Michael understood something that most performers still don't fully grasp. Dance, on stage, isn't just expression, it's communication. Every spin is a sentence, every freeze is a period. And today, Usher has said publicly more than once that he studied Michael's movements the way a law student studies case law. Justin Timberlake grew up watching those VHS tapes until the tape wore thin. BTS, arguably the biggest musical act on the planet right now, has built an entire performance philosophy rooted in synchronized precision storytelling, a language Michael essentially invented for the pop stage. If you see a dance break today anywhere, any genre, any continent, you're watching a seed Michael planted in 1983, still growing, still feeding every artist who comes after. There was a time when a music video was basically a glorified commercial. A band stood in front of some colored lights, mimed the words, maybe threw in a wind machine. That was the format, that was the ceiling. Then, on December 2nd, 1983, MTV premiered Thriller. 14 minutes, John Landis, the director of An American Werewolf in London, in the chair. A full horror narrative arc, zombie choreography rehearsed for weeks, a budget that shattered every precedent in the music video world, and at the center of it, Michael Jackson, who wasn't just performing a song, he was starring in a film. That was the shift. That was the moment Michael looked at the music video format and decided, a song shouldn't just be heard. It should be witnessed. Smooth Criminal followed a full noir thriller with a gangster aesthetic, split-second dance precision, and a storyline that had nothing to do with the conventional idea of what pop music looked like. Remember the Time was an Egyptian epic. Black or White opened with Macaulay Culkin blasting a guitar through a roof. These weren't videos, they were short films with soundtracks. And here's the thing: when you watch Beyonce's Lemonade today, a 65-minute visual album that changed the conversation about what black art and womanhood look like on screen, you are watching the direct philosophical descendant of Thriller. When Lady Gaga treats every music video like a fashion film thesis, She is walking through a door Michael kicked open with a sequin glove. When The Weeknd spent $40 million on the After Hours video trilogy, he was operating on a principle Michael established 4 decades ago: the visuals aren't secondary to the music. They are the music. Michael didn't just change what music videos looked like. He changed what musicians believed they were allowed to do. That's a different kind of legacy. That's not influence, that's permission. This is my favorite part, and I want you to really sit with this one. Most artists are terrified of silence, dead air. The moment the music stops and nobody's moving and the crowd is just waiting. For most performers, that's a nightmare. They fill it, they talk, they hype, they run to another corner of the stage. Michael owned it. There are documented moments, particularly during the Dangerous tour in 1992 and 1993, where Michael would descend to the stage via a hydraulic platform. Stand completely, utterly motionless, arms at his sides for over a minute, sometimes 90 seconds, sometimes longer, not moving, not speaking, just existing in the space, and 60, 70, 80,000 people would lose their collective mind. Think about what that requires. That's not stagecraft. That's psychology. That's an understanding of human anticipation so precise, so calibrated, that Michael could use silence as a weapon the way a conductor uses a downbeat. He knew that a crowd that has been built up properly will fill silence with their own electricity. He didn't have to give them the energy. They gave it to him. It's a strange reality when you think about it. The man did less and the crowd responded more. That principle, the spectacle of restraint, the power of the pause, the idea that the most dramatic thing you can do is sometimes nothing at all. You see it everywhere now. The K-pop industry has essentially industrialized it. BTS, Blackpink, 17. These tours are masterclasses in audience anticipation. The pyrotechnics, the massive LED rigs, the synchronized silence before the drop. That entire formula was being stress tested and perfected in football stadiums in the early 90s by one man, and it wasn't luck. It wasn't instinct alone. Michael studied it. He studied James Brown. He studied Fred Astaire. He studied Sammy Davis Jr. And then he synthesized everything he learned into something entirely his own. The silence wasn't empty, it was loaded: a single glove, high-water pants, a black fedora. Think about the simplicity of that. 3 items, no logos, no branding campaign, no Fashion Week rollout, just 3 deliberately chosen pieces that, when combined with the way Michael moved, became one of the most recognizable visual identities in human history. Here's what Michael understood that most artists are still paying stylists millions to figure out. To be a legend, you have to be a symbol, not a person, a symbol. If someone can recognize your silhouette on a wall, no face, no name, just the shape of you against a light, then you have transcended celebrity and entered mythology. Michael achieved that with a pair of white socks worn with black loafers. Because the high-water pants were a deliberate choice, not a fashion accident. They exposed the socks, which caught the stage light, which drew the eye down to his feet, which was exactly where he wanted you looking when the footwork began. It was engineering disguised as fashion. That singular glove on his right hand, rhinestones hand-sewn by designer Bill Whitten, it wasn't just glam, it was a focal point. In a world where cameras were always chasing him, Michael gave the cameras somewhere specific to look. Today's stars spend millions trying to craft a look. Entire creative teams dedicated to building a visual identity from scratch, and many of them succeed. But the principle, they're all working from the idea that a superstar must be visually irreducible, must be able to exist as an icon and not just a face. Michael didn't borrow that principle. He authored it, for the pop era, with white socks and one glove. So, here's where we land. The truth is, Michael Jackson didn't just influence pop music. He rewrote the rules of what a human being could achieve on a stage. He looked at every element of performance movement, visual storytelling, crowd psychology, personal branding, and he asked the same question about all of them: how far can this go? And then he went further. He didn't just raise the bar, he raised the entire building. Every time an artist moonwalks, they're paying rent in the house Michael built. Every time a music video director treats a 3-minute song like a short film, same thing. Every time a pop star stands in the wings before a show, pulse hammering, knowing that what happens in the next 2 hours has to be more than music, they are operating inside a framework Michael constructed, largely alone, between 1979 and 1995, and nobody has broken out of it, not completely, not yet. Which brings me to the real question, the one I think about every time I watch a sold-out arena show with a 100-foot LED wall and a 40-piece dance ensemble and pyrotechnics that cost more than a small country's GDP. Can anyone ever truly step out of his shadow? Or has Michael Jackson done something so fundamental, so structural to the DNA of pop performance that the shadow is now just the atmosphere? The thing we all breathe, without knowing it came from him? I genuinely don't know the answer to that, and I think the not knowing is the point, because legends don't just leave footprints. They change the ground itself. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Who do you think comes closest to stepping out of Michael's shadow? Or do you think it's even possible? I'm Frank John, and the Vault is watching. Stay legendary, signing off.